All right, so I wanted to talk about image optimization specifically with WordPress, but really just in the web in general. And it's kind of a three-step thing, right? It's the way that we approach images in development. It's the way that we create assets to make sure that our beautiful designs appear, correctly once we launch the site. And then it's also the producers teaching our clients how to populate this stuff and sort of not let the site degrade over time because they're uploading these enormous images into WordPress and killing their performance. So just the real quick, why should we care? Which I noticed that if you go full screen, it still doesn't show these emojis. So that's why I had a little bit of an issue. But the reason we should care is because as sites, or as we become, as time goes on and we create these newer, more beautiful modern sites, it means that they generally have, for marketing sites, more and larger images, it seems, has been the trend. And images make up, a huge majority of the page weight for the site. And that's what really kills performance. So this 25 to 75% average is sort of all over the place in terms of just your site design. But that's kind of the trend as of last year and this year. And that means that, your sites could be up to 3 to 5 megabytes just for one page, which is huge, especially if you're on mobile. So the goal is just to optimize all the images as much as you humanly can when you upload them so that you can reduce that page load. And when you do that, your pages load faster, which gives us a perceived better user experience for end users. So, there's nothing worse when you go to a site and you're kind of waiting for things to happen. Outside of third-party scripts, the best way that you can do that to sort of make sure that everything feels snappy and is faster is to make sure that your images are optimized. And also, using things like lazy load to sort of give a little bit more perceived performance as for the page load. There's another part here where clients are getting a little more savvy in that they're checking Google page speed after we launch these sites, and they're saying, why is our page speed score on Google like a D or an F? And a lot of the times it's related to images. Third-party stuff comes into that. That's much easier for us to kind of talk down or talk away when it's all the different scripts that they're having us put on their site. But a lot of the times Google is pointing out the fact that there's a lot of images and they're loading slowly. Can you do something about it? And they're pretty strict about that stuff. So if we can just try to optimize images from the beginning, that's going to help. It also helps with SEO. Just in the past couple of years, search engines like Google are now ranking slower sites lower on the list and ranking better performance sites higher. And then, like I said earlier, mobile. Like if you're trying to load all these huge images on mobile, it's going to suck for everybody. And also, it costs end users bandwidth, which that's real money that we can help them with by just taking a little time and doing things correctly. So the way to do that, the easiest way to just think about image zen, so is what I call it, which is there's a balance, and it's not an exact science, but the idea is you want to make sure you have your image size and your image compression for each image sort of optimized to what it should be in place to match the design. Image size, that is usually based on the design and the usage of the image. So you want to make sure that you upload images that are sized for the largest dimension that's going to be used on the site. And then we kind of scale it down for other usages throughout the site. And then we want to have that image compressed to a point and use the right image type or file type to make sure that we're sort of getting the most out of the image size that we're serving to the site. And I'll get into all this in a little more detail in a second, but the goal is just to not upload we have a nice, beautiful 5,000 by 4,000 size image. It's really easy to upload that and not really think about this because WordPress will just say, sure, give it to me, I'll take it. But that's not really what we want to do, because especially if you have like 8 of those on the homepage, you're talking about an enormous page load. And it can be easy to forget about that. So you just want to make sure you think about these as you're uploading images and take care so that the site is performant. And more importantly for us producers, to make sure that we teach this stuff to the clients so they're not making these mistakes down the road, or at least as much as possible. So if we're going to talk about the real high level basics of images, primarily what we're dealing with are JPEGs, PNGs, GIFs, and SVGs. And I'm not expecting you to learn everything about this stuff. Those are what have been the standards for the web for the past 20 years. That's changing a little bit. It's changing slowly in that there are new, better file types that you see listed on the right there that we're trying to shift to. It hasn't really happened yet, just because it's one of those things that's hard to to train people with, and really just to get the technology up to bar. But there will be that shift, and it makes sense. I mean, most of these file types were created in the 70s and 80s, and they carry a lot of baggage with them. They have a lot of metadata that's not really meant for the web. That's just extra file size. A lot of them carry all the different, statistics for the cameras that they were shot on, and all this just extra weight. So a lot of these newer formats take that out and also help reduce the size of the images. But what we should be thinking about is just choosing the right file type for the web and or for our designs. Most of the time, that's going to be JPEGs that we've compressed to the right compression level that we think looks good. And then there's other usages, that come up. So basically, like, most of the time we're going to be using JPEGs. If we use PNGs, if we have to have transparent background, is usually the reason that we use them. And then we use SVGs whenever possible because it's a vector, and that uses a lot less space. The difference between this is supposed to be raster or vector. So can I change it? No. So the difference between vector versus other image types here is that if you've heard of a bitmap, it just means that bitmaps are a whole bunch of dots and all the data that's involved with keeping the color value of each one of those dots. Whereas a vector is actually it's really just a value of numbers that the computer reads and can generate an image on the right. It's a much smaller amount of data. So we use those for icons and stuff, but we've also been using them for other places where possible, just because it really brings down the image size and they still look good. The only drawback is they're usually more illustrative style, and they take a lot of time to create. So a lot of times we're going to be purchasing those. So the ones on the left are going to be more common. Man, you can tell I made this at 11 o'clock at night last night because this is supposed to be GIF. So I'm just going from the right on. So GIF is going to be more times when you're animated. They take up a lot of space and the quality isn't that good. So it's generally for items that are going to be animated on the page. We don't use them that often. We more so use PNGs, which take up a lot more space than JPEGs. So we generally use them when there's transparent background. And then JPEGs, which are the most common. And the thing here is that they can be a lot less, size much smaller depending on the compression level. And all that means is you can take a lot of the sort of color values out and not lose a lot of the quality just by compressing that image in Photoshop or some tools online. And you can see here that these are all different. These all look like the same image, and it's kind of hard to tell in the slide here, but if you look at the sizes, a huge difference between 100% and 60%. No one would ever see that on the web. If you go down below 60%, you'll probably start seeing some perceived quality degradation. So you don't really want to do that. I usually stick around 60 to 65, do like a quick spot check when I'm saving out images. But with the amount of images that we have, if you just think about this difference right here is, we're like about a 10% the size and no real difference in perceived quality. So across the site, that makes a huge difference in how much, this just the size of the entire site in each page. So we want to pay attention to that as we're creating each one of these assets, and then, teach people to think about it the same way. And stop me if anybody has any questions. I know a lot of this is elementary for most people, but to get into the sort of nitty gritty here. So if we're working with WordPress, one of the challenges that we have is that we create these designs, and a lot of the times there's this disconnect in that we've created the designs, we know how big the images are, but there's no real way for us as producers, if we're putting the content in, or the client that putting the content in, to know what size images they're supposed to be putting up there, unless we create some comp that has the image sizes all over it. So a lot of times what I do is I just inspect the page in the browser, and for whatever the largest size is, figure out what that sort of image size should be. And that's what I use as my basis to get the image, and then kind of compress down sort of final image to that size and upload it to WordPress. But that's asking a lot of clients, I think. So there's a bit of a problem there, especially if you don't have tech savvy people that's going to be adding these images, especially down the road when we hand this off. So I think one thing we can do to just make things so much easier for people is this bullet here, which is definitely we should be thinking about adding help notes in the admin to give optimum image sizes to at least for the the primary images like the mantle images and stuff like that. Because I get asked this all the time by clients of like, what image size should this be? And it would just save so much time to spend a few extra minutes to go through and put those in. And I realize that's kind of a designer and developer work together type of a thing, but I think we could spend maybe 20 minutes, half an hour, and do that, and just really down the road help the client so much. um, and that would prevent them from not having to inspect the page to find out what that is. But even just going in, the way that a lot of them I've learned do it is they'll go in and edit these existing images. You click on the little pencil button, it gives you the dimensions. That works, but a lot of times they might not be looking at the correct location, so they're sort of getting the wrong dimension, uploading the wrong size, and it looks like crap. And it just goes a long way to add a little bit of extra finesse to WordPress to the admin to help them out. Another thing is a lot of them don't have access to Photoshop, so you can crop in WordPress, but exact control is just a little bit easier externally. That's a bit of a thing that I've kind of run into with clients that I don't really know how the workaround is without sort of giving them access to a real sort of editing tool like Photoshop. There's some online, but they're really also, they take forever. So I do often tell them to use the WordPress cropping functionality, but it's not the best. So if anybody has any ideas of a way that we can introduce a better like plugin or something like that at the base level to give them
what are the issues with it?
You can't really, you can set a ratio with images, but you can't say I want it to be this ratio at this size. Like you kind of have to go back and forth, and it's a little wonky. And it just, people get hung up on it. And just one more note, since we were talking about SEO and accessibility, which are obviously two huge things. One thing that I think we forget to do, and a lot of people and clients forget to do, is just add that specific metadata that's required for each image, which in WordPress, alt text is the primary one. Titles and captions are generally based on the design, but if we're uploading these images, if we don't have the alt text when we're uploading them, then we have to make sure the client knows that someone has to go back through and add that in, or it's not going to be a very accessible site. It's just, you just need that for each one of the images in order for the crawls to go and for screen readers to work and for all of that.
Can I add one thing there, Jason?
Yep.
I would also say we should be more mindful of image names because that also goes into the file name specifically, not just what we title it.
Yep.
So that's descriptive as well, because that'll impact SEO.
That's a great point. There are some new services out there that basically can run in the background and optimize site or images on your server. I think they're great. The problem is that they do cost extra money, which some clients aren't willing to pay for. But if you get the right client and it makes sense, these can be, I think, lifesavers in that they'll kind of just run and sort of automatically apply image compression in the background of your server and keep things not only compressed to the level that you set, but they'll a lot of them have extra features where they'll go through and even update them with more modern sort of next gen file types. And some other stuff to just keep continuously bringing down your the page load. And obviously, if you have a whole bunch of 5,000 by 5,000 images, if that's not really going to be very helpful, you have to make sure you upload them at the right size at the beginning. Or per Omar's comment, make sure we have the crop size there so that it's optimizing the right sizes for use in the site. But they're pretty awesome, and I think that we're going to be hearing more about these in the future. Smush and EWWW are the two that I've used in the past that I think are really good. We just have to be careful to make sure that whatever host we're using supports them, because like WP Engine doesn't like some of these. So in summary, compress all your images properly and set their dimensions to their use on the site. Add an external optimization tool for appropriate sites if possible, if you can get the client, because a lot of clients worry about this stuff. So it's a great tool to sort of give them a little peace of mind for down the road. Use SVGs or as vector files whenever possible to bring down the page weight and give nice clean images that are smaller. Incorporate lazy loading of images. Lazy loading just means that the images don't appear or they don't load until you're scrolling down the screen. And this works great for like those tiled views that you see on a lot of sites where you don't really need to load the entire page. If most people don't scroll through the whole page anyway.
La- Lazy loading is becoming an official spec, browser spec, meaning it's going to be a native feature of browser soon. I think Chrome is going to be the first to land it, which is awesome because it's just something that we have to add JavaScript for right now. It's just obnoxious for such a good optimization that should be built into browsers, and thankfully it's happening.
That's awesome. Less work for us. Use a CDN to serve your images fast and reduce server load. So this is obviously for more medium to large size sites, but this is a kind of a separate server that hosts all your images. A lot of this some of the hosts like WP Engine and stuff have this as part of their service, but it's it helps serve those images faster, and then a lot of the CDNs will have locations around the world that are closer to international users that also help sort of reduce the burden on your site. Make this Enigma understandable for clients. This is on the producers to really just help them kind of understand how to add images to the site. And then promote the use of next-gen image formats. Like I think this is going to be something maybe not in the short term, but in the long term, we're going to be hearing more of. So just be aware that it's something that we'll have to take into consideration as we're doing asset creation. Thank you.